Tonight, we're going to explore some timeless Zen stories and Buddhist practices that have helped people find peace and relaxation for centuries. If your mind has been pulled in countless directions today by glowing screens, by endless tasks, by the restless hum of a digital world, this story may gently invite you back to a quieter place inside yourself. Imagine for a moment that your eyes, weary from looking at phones, tablets, and computers, could soften the way a curtain falls across a window at dusk. You don't have to force them open wide, nor press them shut. Just soft, just resting. And as your gaze relaxes, the tension in your shoulders begins to melt too. In our busy lives, it's easy to forget that calm isn't out there. It's already yours to uncover. You've had it since the beginning. It's there even now, beneath the layers of tension and fatigue. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so feel free to share your location and local time in the comments. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey together. The scene opens with a gentle invitation to see with soft eyes, not the piercing, narrow gaze that screens demand of us, but a wide, open, relaxed seeing. Picture standing on a hilltop at dusk, gazing across the horizon. Your eyes aren't fixed on a single point. They're simply open to everything, to the play of clouds, to the fading light, to the stillness stretching out as far as you can see. This is what Zen teachers call soft eyes, though it can be explained in very simple terms. You let your gaze broaden and allow your awareness to rest in the whole scene rather than locking onto a single detail. Why is this important? Because modern life constantly trains us to do the opposite. A flashing notification, a blinking cursor, a bold headline. Each one insists, "Look at me." Our eyes learn to snap from one point to the next, tense and narrow. No wonder, then, that by the end of the day, they ache, and with them, the mind feels tight and restless. But when you soften the gaze, something remarkable happens. The world seems less urgent, less fragmented. Your whole nervous system begins to ease. There's an old story about a monk who was once asked how he managed to stay so calm, even when surrounded by noise or confusion. He smiled and said, "I see everything as though it were painted on water." Think about that image for a moment. Water doesn't hold the painting. It shimmers, it ripples, and then it clears. In the same way, the monk wasn't clinging to each sight or sound. He allowed them to pass through, soft eyes resting lightly on the world. This practice can be felt not just with the eyes, but with the heart. To look at life with soft eyes is to stop piercing it with demands and judgments. It's to release the grip of always needing to analyze, compare, or measure. Imagine how different it feels to look at your phone with urgency, scanning for every new update, versus looking at the night sky with ease, simply receiving what is there. The Buddha taught that clinging fuels suffering. Let that sink in for a moment. And clinging is not just about objects or people. It's also about the way we cling to each flashing thing that crosses our vision. When you practice soft eyes, you step into a wider way of being. You begin to notice the peripheral, the subtle, the overlooked. It's like standing in a field and suddenly realizing you can see not just the flowers in front of you, but the swaying of the tall grass at the edge, the arc of birds circling above, the way the sunlight catches a distant stream. All of this enters your awareness without effort. Soft eyes teach you that attention doesn't always need to strain. It can simply open. One quirky practice used in some Zen monasteries was to sit outdoors at twilight, not to meditate in the traditional sense, but just to let the gaze soften into the changing sky. The monks weren't chasing visions or counting breaths. They were just allowing their eyes to rest in the fading light, a daily reminder that perception itself can be gentle. You can try this too. The next time the sun is setting, pause and let your eyes go soft. Notice how the colors shift, how the edges blur, how the whole scene feels less like a set of objects and more like one flowing tapestry. And here comes a question a Zen master might ask if you were sitting together. What happens when you no longer try to catch the world with your eyes, but let it arrive on its own? In that question lies a doorway, because when you release the chase, when you stop trying to pin down each detail, your mind begins to mirror the softness of your gaze. It becomes like a pond in which the ripples are fewer and the reflections more clear. You may already feel a slight difference, even as you listen. Perhaps your jaw has unclenched. Perhaps the muscles around your eyes, often pulled tight by hours of digital focus, are finally allowed to rest. This is no small thing. Your body keeps score of every flicker of stress, and when you soften the eyes, you invite the whole body into calm. Outside your window tonight, the wind may be brushing against the trees. You hear the leaves shifting, a sound as old as time, and it reminds you that the world doesn't ask you to strain. Nature doesn't flash at you, doesn't demand that you keep scrolling. It simply moves at its own pace, and if you choose, you can soften your gaze and be carried along with it. There's one more image to carry with you, a lantern glowing at dusk. When you stare hard at the flame, you see only its brightness. But when you soften your eyes, you notice the halo around it, the way it gently lights the faces nearby, the way shadows stretch out across the floor. Softness allows you to see more, not less. In that sense, to soften your gaze is to broaden your life. And so, as this journey begins, the invitation is simple. Tonight, see with soft eyes. Let go of the sharpness that screens have trained into you. Feel how your mind follows your vision, growing wider, calmer, more at ease. If you carry nothing else from this first step, carry this. Peace is not found in narrowing down, but in opening up. The story now drifts to a different kind of image, one that has soothed people for generations. The reflection of a mountain lake. Imagine standing beside such a lake at dawn. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. The surface of the water is so still, it mirrors the sky, as if the heavens themselves were resting within it. Every detail, the soft curve of a passing cloud, the pale blush of the early sun, appears perfectly clear. Only when the wind rises or a stone drops into the water do ripples distort the reflection. This is how the mind behaves. When untouched by constant disturbance, it reflects reality with ease and accuracy. But when bombarded by constant input, the ping of messages, the flicker of videos, the endless scroll, it becomes like a lake stirred by restless hands. Thoughts ripple across the surface, each one chasing the next, until the reflection is lost in turbulence. Zen teachers often use this imagery to describe the value of stillness. Not because stillness erases life, but because it allows life to be seen as it is. When you pause long enough, when you let the ripples settle, clarity naturally returns. In this sense, the teaching is not about achieving a new state, but about uncovering the calm that was already there, hidden beneath the waves. One old Zen anecdote tells of a monk who, tired from study, asked his master, "How do I quiet the chaos of my thoughts?" The master pointed to a small pond outside their hut. He dropped a stick into it, stirring the water until it churned with waves. Then he said, "Look, now the pond is full of shapes and shadows. Can you see its bottom clearly?" The monk shook his head. The master waited. After a few minutes, the water calmed, and the stones beneath were visible again. "There," said the master. "The pond clears itself if you do not disturb it further." So too, with your mind, modern life is not so forgiving. It seems designed to keep the pond stirred at all times, Each swipe on a phone, each glowing notification, each late-night binge of images and text, each is like another stick plunged into the water. And yet, even in this restless world, the principle remains. If you stop disturbing the pond, the water will clear. Your mind, too, knows how to restore itself when given the chance. How often do we confuse agitation with productivity? The buzzing screen makes us feel alive, connected, engaged. But much of that movement is like ripples, busy on the surface, yet hiding the bottom from view. What might we see or understand if we allowed the pond to still? There's another small practice once shared among monks. When traveling, they would pause at a natural stream or pool, gazing quietly at its surface before drinking. Not to analyze, not to achieve enlightenment, but simply to mirror the water's calm. By resting their eyes on something still, their minds remembered stillness. It's something you can try in your own way. Pour a glass of water and let it sit on your desk. Take a few minutes just to watch the light move across it. Notice how even this ordinary act invites the nervous system to settle. The Buddha's teaching on cause and effect is at work here. When you stir the water, ripples follow. When you stop, calm follows. This applies to the inner life as well. Cause leads to effect, and peace is not an accident. It grows when we stop feeding the turbulence. Now, think about this from another angle. A Zen master might ask, if the water is never stirred, can you truly know its depth? Sometimes it is only by watching the chaos and then its fading that we appreciate what lies beneath. Perhaps the struggle with digital fatigue is not only a curse, but also an opportunity to realize how deeply we crave the stillness hidden underneath. You might picture yourself tonight as if you were that lake. Thoughts, like leaves, drop in from time to time. A notification may cross your mind even now. The echo of a conversation, the pull of unfinished work. Each one creates ripples. But notice, if you don't chase them, they fade. If you don't add more, the surface grows smooth again. And when it does, the reflection of the moon, or the stars, returns. It can feel strange at first to sit without doing, to look at stillness rather than activity. But remember, the lake is not less alive when calm. It is more revealing. In the same way, your mind is not less vibrant when quiet. It is more true. And perhaps tonight, as you lie here, you can feel some of those ripples easing. You don't have to erase them. They are part of the lake. But you can let them slow, one by one, until the surface widens into peace. Imagine the quiet depth below, cool and endless, holding everything gently. Outside, you might hear the distant sound of a car passing, or the hush of the evening breeze. These are like small ripples too. But notice how, if you soften into them, they fade into the background, leaving the broader silence intact. So the mountain lake offers this teaching. The mind is not broken when restless. It is simply stirred. And just as water knows how to settle, so does your awareness. All that's required is permission. And a final reflection, something you might carry into your dreams tonight. When you look into a still lake, you see the sky reflected. It is not the sky itself, but it points to something vast and endless above. In the same way, when your mind is still, it reflects peace, not as an escape, but as a reminder of the spaciousness already here. What would happen if, for just this evening, you let your lake rest? The story flows onward, carrying us from the quiet lake into the noise of the modern world. Imagine the hum of devices around you, the buzzing phone that never seems to sleep, the sharp ping of incoming emails, the glow of screens late into the night. These sounds and lights weave together into what might be called digital noise, a constant backdrop that rarely leaves us in true silence. Yet contrast this with an old image: monks sitting in stone halls, facing bare walls for hours, their ears filled only with the sound of their own breath and perhaps the rustle of robes. The clash between these two worlds could not be sharper. One pulls us outward, always demanding response. The other invites us inward, into spaces where nothing insists on being answered. This tension is something many of us feel daily. The body grows restless from the flashing alerts, while the heart quietly yearns for the stillness that silence brings. A well-known Zen story describes a monk who was asked how he could endure sitting motionless, facing a blank wall for so many hours each day. He replied, "Because the wall never asks me to be anyone else." That response reveals something profound. When you stare at a screen, it often demands a role. Worker, consumer, entertainer, critic. When you face a wall, nothing is required. You are free to simply be. What would happen if we had more walls in our lives? Not the walls of concrete or brick, but the walls of stillness, the kind that nothing from us? Could those silent walls heal the exhaustion that digital noise creates? The Buddha once spoke of noble silence, not the silence of suppression, where words are held back by force, but the silence that blooms naturally when nothing more needs to be said. Think about the difference. When a conversation ends awkwardly, silence feels heavy. But when two people understand each other deeply, silence feels warm, even full. Digital spaces rarely allow this kind of silence. There is always another comment, another alert, another feed demanding attention. Noble silence has become rare, but not impossible. One quirky practice used by certain Zen communities involved periods of intentional, unnecessary silence. For an entire day, monks would go about their tasks, sweeping, eating, walking, without a word, even though no vow of silence had been declared. The goal wasn't to enforce strict discipline, but to discover how much life reveals itself when chatter falls away. Perhaps you might try your own version of this. An afternoon without notifications, a meal without background noise, a walk without headphones. In those simple pauses, you may find a doorway to the same stillness those monks discovered centuries ago. Consider the soundscape of your day. How often do you notice true silence? Not just the absence of obvious noise, but the deeper quiet that appears when the constant need to respond subsides. Digital fatigue thrives on interruption. It feeds on the startle of each new ping. Yet, silence is always waiting beneath, like an unmoved rock under a rushing stream. There's a story of a teacher who once sat with his students while they were chattering endlessly about a new teaching. Instead of interrupting, he simply closed his eyes and waited. Slowly, one by one, the students noticed his stillness and fell quiet. After several minutes, the only sound was the birds outside. The teacher opened his eyes and said softly, "This is also the teaching." In that moment, the silence itself carried the lesson, needing no words. How different would it feel if, instead of rushing to answer every message, you allowed a pause? If you treated your responses like stones carefully placed on a path, rather than pebbles scattered in haste. The silence between words is what gives them meaning, just as the space between musical notes creates melody. Without silence, sound becomes unbearable. Without stillness, life becomes a blur. A Zen master might ask, "Are you listening to the silence, or only to the noise that covers it?" The question lingers, inviting you to notice what lies beneath your everyday experience. Right now, as you listen, perhaps you can tune your awareness to the space between sounds. Maybe you hear the faint hum of an appliance or the murmur of traffic in the distance. But between those sounds, there is always a gap, a soft background of nothing. Rest your mind there for a moment. Notice how your body seems to ease when it has no demand to process. This teaching connects back to digital fatigue in a simple but powerful way. Devices offer endless input, but little rest. To counter this, one can practice micro moments of noble silence. Just a breath or two before answering a message. Just a pause before switching from one task to the next. In those tiny spaces, you allow the lake of your mind to settle and the wall of silence to reappear. The monks who sat facing walls were not escaping the world. They were remembering what the world sounds like when it stops screaming. And you, too, can taste that even in the middle of modern life. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the notifications fading into silence. Picture yourself in a stone hall, bare and simple, where the only sound is your breath. Notice the relief that comes with nothing to answer. And perhaps you can carry this into your evening. Let the phone rest a little longer before you check it. Let your eyes rest a little longer before you strain them again. And let the silence teach you the way it has taught countless seekers before you, that peace is not something to be earned, but something to be remembered. As the story of digital noise and silent monks comes to a close, the teaching is clear. Every sound carries an invitation. You can chase it, or you can rest in the silence beneath. Tonight, may you choose the silence. The journey now drifts toward the rhythm of breath, as steady and timeless as a river flowing through valleys. Imagine sitting by such a river at dusk. The air is cool, the light is soft, and the water glides by without effort, endlessly moving, yet never in a hurry. Your chest rises and falls in the same way, each inhale flowing in, each exhale flowing out. A current that has sustained you since the moment you were born. When eyes grow tired from screens and thoughts buzz like restless insects, the breath becomes a doorway back to calm. You don't have to control it, only notice it. The Buddha once compared awareness of breathing to anchoring a ship in a storm. Even when the waves are fierce, the anchor holds you steady. In modern language, this means that by returning to breath, you can weather the turbulence of endless digital demands. Picture yourself breathing now. As you inhale, the body fills with cool air, like a river drawing fresh water from the mountains. As you exhale, tension drifts away, just as the river releases water into the sea. You don't command the river to flow. It moves on its own. The same is true of your breath. All you need to do is notice. There's a simple Zen practice called following the breath to the end. Monks would sit quietly, eyes soft, and trace each inhale and exhale all the way through, as if accompanying a friend on a walk. The trick was not to count or force, but to stay with the breath until its very edge. By doing so, they discovered that each breath carried a natural pause, a moment of stillness before the next inhale began. That pause, however brief, became a taste of pure quiet. How often do you notice that pause in your own life? Or do you rush from one breath to the next, one task to the next, as though afraid to stop. Perhaps this is why digital fatigue weighs so heavily. The world of screens offers no pause. The scrolling is endless. The feed never reaches its bottom. The notifications never cease. Yet your breath carries pauses as a gift, a reminder that rest is built into the rhythm of living. Another teaching tells of a student who asked his master, "What is meditation?" The master replied, "Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out." The student was puzzled. "Is that all?" The master smiled. "That is enough." For those who seek grand philosophies, this teaching may seem too simple. But simplicity often hides the deepest truths. To notice one's breath is to return home to the present moment. Now imagine yourself again by the river. The surface catches light from the sky, shimmering with gentle patterns. Sometimes a leaf drifts across, spinning slowly until the current carries it away. That leaf is like a thought. It arrives, floats for a while, and then passes. You don't need to chase it or hold it. The river takes care of it. And your breath, too, carries thoughts downstream when you allow it. A curious practice once used by some monks was to sit beside actual rivers and match their breathing to the rhythm of the water. They believed that nature's breath could remind them of their own. Perhaps you can try something similar, not necessarily by a river, but by simply imagining it. Each inhale is the river swelling. Each exhale is the river releasing. In that way, your breath becomes part of the earth's own rhythm. Let us pause for a reflection. What would happen if you treated your breath not as a background process, but as a teacher? Could each inhale remind you of receiving life anew? Could each exhale teach you the art of letting go? Notice now, as you listen, how the body softens with every exhale. Shoulders drop. The jaw loosens. Even the muscles around the eyes, strained from long hours of focus, begin to rest. Breath is not only air, it is medicine, quietly working without demand. There is a Zen story of a monk who was anxious, always hurrying through his duties. One evening, he approached his teacher, saying he felt suffocated by the pressure of daily life. The teacher asked him to sit down and guided him to breathe deeply, slowly, without speaking. After a few minutes, the monk's eyes softened. The teacher said, "You were breathing all along, but you did not know it. Now that you know it, you are free." The monk bowed, realizing that relief had been as close as his own lungs. You, too, might realize this tonight. No matter the weight of digital fatigue, the breath remains. It has always been with you, patient and steady, waiting to remind you of your own resilience. As you lie here, consider that each breath is both ordinary and miraculous. Ordinary, because it happens every moment without effort. Miraculous, because without it, nothing else could exist. How often do we overlook miracles simply because they repeat themselves? Now soften again into your own rhythm. Inhale. Feel the coolness entering the nostrils, the chest gently expanding. Exhale. Feel warmth leaving, tension sliding away. Let your awareness rest here, as naturally as a leaf floating on a stream. And here is a question a Zen master might leave hanging in the air. If you follow your breath to its source, where does it begin? And if you follow it to its end, where does it go? Such questions are not puzzles to solve, but invitations to wonder. The teaching of the river breath is simple. Life is already flowing, and you are carried within it. You don't need to force the current. You only need to notice its movement and trust that it knows the way. Tonight, let the breath carry you, gently and without effort, into rest. The journey drifts now into the image of bamboo swaying in the wind. Tall, slender stalks rise from the earth, their green leaves trembling gently, yet the bamboo does not break. Storms may bend it nearly to the ground, but when the wind passes, the bamboo returns upright, flexible and alive. This quality has inspired countless Zen teachers and poets as a symbol of resilience. Think for a moment about your own day. How many times have you felt bent by the force of digital winds? A flood of emails, a sudden demand from work, the endless scroll of information pressing into your thoughts. Each gust seems determined to topple you. Yet, like bamboo, you need not resist with rigid force. You can bend, you can sway, you can allow the storm to pass without breaking. The Buddha taught that suffering often arises from clinging, our refusal to let things move as they will. If we insist on standing rigid, the winds of life can snap us. But when we loosen our grip, when we learn to yield, we discover a hidden strength. The bamboo's softness is its power. In the same way, gentleness can be your power in the face of digital stress. There is a Zen story of a monk who once struggled with anger. He wanted to hold tightly to control, to resist every challenge. His master took him to a bamboo grove during a storm. The stalks bent low, nearly brushing the ground. But after the storm, they rose again, unharmed. The master asked, "If bamboo were like oak, would it survive this storm?" The monk shook his head. The lesson was clear. Resilience comes not from hardness, but from adaptability. How might this apply to digital fatigue? Think of your eyes strained by hours of rigid focus on screens. They have been held tight, unyielding, fixed on pixels. What if you allowed them to be like bamboo, softening, relaxing, shifting to a wider gaze? The same principle applies to the mind. Instead of gripping every thought, every message, every demand, you could let them sway through, releasing each one as the wind carries leaves away. Some monks practiced what they called walking like bamboo. During meditation walks, they would imagine themselves as flexible stalks, their spines upright but supple, their steps flowing like leaves stirred by wind. This playful image helped them remember that discipline did not mean stiffness. It meant steadiness with ease. You can practice this too, perhaps on your next walk outside, or even just moving from one room to another. Walk as though you are bamboo swaying in a gentle breeze. Feel how tension drops when you no longer resist gravity, but move with it. There's another story of resilience. A monk once asked, "What is wisdom in the face of hardship?" His teacher answered, "It is like bamboo, hollow inside, yet unbroken." This hollowness was not emptiness in a bleak sense, but openness, room to receive without shattering. Think about your mind during digital overload. When you feel crammed with information, there is no room to breathe. But when you cultivate inner spaciousness, you create a kind of hollowness that allows noise to pass through without damage. Reflect for a moment. Are you more like a rigid branch, snapping under weight, or like bamboo, bending, yet returning? How often do you resist the inevitable winds of life, wishing they would stop rather than learning to sway with them? The beauty of bamboo is not only in its flexibility, but also in its persistence. It grows quickly, spreading roots that anchor it deeply. Even when cut down, it rises again. For you, this can mean that each moment of rest, each practice of soft eyes or steady breath, is like sending roots deeper into the soil of calm. When storms return, those roots keep you steady. Outside your window tonight, you may hear wind moving through trees, perhaps even brushing against bamboo if you live where it grows. Notice how the sound is not violent but rhythmic, like nature's own song of resilience. Each rustle is a reminder that flexibility is not weakness. It is survival. And more than that, it is grace. A Zen master might ask, "What breaks you? The storm, or your refusal to bend?" The question is not meant to accuse, but to open reflection. Perhaps the storms of life are not the true cause of exhaustion. Perhaps it is the rigid way we brace against them. Digital storms may never end completely. Technology will continue to demand, to flash, to call for attention. But you can meet them differently. Like bamboo, you can choose when to bend, when to sway, and when to return upright again. Try something now. Imagine yourself as bamboo. Feel the spine lengthen, upright but not rigid. As you inhale, imagine the stalk rising tall. As you exhale, imagine swaying gently, relaxed yet rooted. The body softens into this image, and the mind follows. Stress becomes less a breaking point, more a breeze moving through. The lesson of bamboo is this: strength is not found in resistance, but in harmony. The digital world will continue its winds, but you need not let them snap you. Instead, you can bend, rest, and rise again. Tonight, let yourself sway lightly, trusting that calm will return, just as bamboo always returns after a storm. The journey continues, turning now to the practice of seeing without straining. Think of how often your eyes are forced into narrow focus, locked on glowing rectangles, flickering images, endless streams of text. You peer and squint, pressing vision into sharp lines. The muscles tighten, the brow furrows, and fatigue settles in, heavy as a stone. Yet there is another way of seeing, taught quietly by Zen practitioners: soft eyes. Soft eyes do not mean blurry or unfocused in a careless sense. They mean relaxed, open, receptive. Instead of narrowing in on one detail, soft eyes allow the whole field of vision to be received at once. It is like standing in a meadow and noticing not just the flower before you, but the way the grass sways, the arc of obscured above, the subtle shift of shadows across distant hills. Why does this matter? Because modern life has trained us into tunnel vision. Notifications demand instant attention. Apps reward pinpoint focus. Videos urge us not to look away. This sharp, strained seeing exhausts not only the eyes, but the mind. When attention is always tightened, it becomes brittle. The practice of soft eyes teaches us that attention can also be spacious, supple, and restful. An old story tells of a Zen master who taught archery. His students struggled, aiming with intense concentration. Their arrows wobbled, their bodies shook. The master finally said, "You see too hard. Soften your eyes. Let the target come to you." When the students relaxed their gaze, arrows began to fly straighter, almost as if guided by the air itself. The lesson was not just about archery. It was about how life itself can align when we stop straining. Consider how this applies to digital fatigue. If you stare at a screen with piercing focus, you may absorb information, but you also drain yourself. Yet if you soften your gaze, even for a few breaths, you may notice the tension dissolving. Try it now. Without moving your head, allow your eyes to widen, taking in the edges of your room. Notice how the body relaxes when you no longer force the eyes to grasp. There is a quirky practice in some Zen traditions where students are told to sit before a wall, but instead of closing their eyes, they are asked to soften their gaze until they see the wall and their own presence as one scene. Not wall here, self there, but a single, shared field. This practice dissolves the feeling of separation and reminds the practitioner that perception is not about conquering objects, but participating in a wider whole. What would happen if you treated your own daily seeing in this way? Could you look at a crowded screen and notice not just the details, but also the space around them? Could you recognize that every pixel, every message exists within a larger field that includes your breath, your body, the quiet of your room? The Buddha once said that clinging creates suffering, and this includes clinging with the eyes. When we grasp with vision, trying to capture and hold every detail, we grow weary. But when we release into a softer gaze, we discover that perception itself can be restful. Imagine a lantern glowing in the dark. If you stare hard at the flame, you see only its sharp brightness. But if you soften your eyes, you notice the glow spreading outward, the way shadows dance, the gentle halo expanding. Soft eyes reveal more, not less. One reflection to hold. When was the last time you allowed your eyes to rest as much as your ears? We often close our eyes only to sleep, forgetting that they, too, deserve pauses of gentleness. Even a moment of softened vision can be like a sip of water for a thirsty traveler. A Zen master might ask you this: are your eyes windows or fists? It is a strange question, but consider it. When your gaze is clenched, it is like a fist, tight and grabbing. When your gaze is open, it is like a window, allowing the world to enter naturally. Tonight, as you lie here, you might notice the difference. Instead of focusing hard on one thought or one image, let your inner gaze soften. Imagine looking at the night sky, not hunting for constellations, but simply receiving the stars as they are. Feel how the body responds with relief. There's another practice worth trying. Some monks would gaze at candlelight with soft eyes until the flame seemed to blur into their own awareness. They weren't hypnotizing themselves, but allowing vision to become part of meditation. The result was a calmness that extended beyond the eyes into the whole nervous system. You might recreate this at home, sitting before a single candle, allowing your eyes to rest gently on the flame without strain. Outside, the world is full of sharp lines, signs, screens, alerts, but also of softness, the curve of clouds, the blur of trees at twilight, the fading of colors at dusk. If you choose, you can let those soft edges teach you how to see again without effort. And here, a final reflection. What might you discover if you lived one day with soft eyes? Would your shoulders ache less? Your breath deepen? Your heart feel more at ease? Perhaps the world, so often overwhelming, would appear not as a series of sharp demands, but as a flowing whole, gentle and continuous. The teaching of soft eyes is simple. Vision is not meant to be a battle. It is meant to be a resting. When you learn to see without straining, you not only ease the fatigue of the day, you remember how to live with gentleness. Tonight, let your eyes soften and let the world come to you quietly, without demand. The story now turns to a teaching wrapped in echoes. Imagine yourself standing in a valley where every word you speak returns to you, softened and delayed. Hello, you call, and somewhere in the distance, the valley whispers back, hello. The echo is faithful, yet empty. It repeats without judgment, without care, without attachment. This is the stage for tonight's story. The monk and the echo. There was once a monk who lived on the edge of a mountain village. He was known for his gentleness, though he often puzzled others with his silence. One day, a young villager asked him, "Why do you never answer every question that comes your way? People seek your wisdom. Shouldn't you reply?" The monk only smiled and motioned for the boy to follow him into the hills. They climbed until they reached a place where the mountains formed a deep hollow. The monk cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Fool!" The word bounced back at them. Fool! 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 The boy frowned. The monk then shouted, "Friend!" And the echo replied, "Friend! Friend! Friend!" Finally, he turned to the boy and said, "The world is like this echo. You need not answer every call." Think about this story in the context of modern life. Notifications pop up like echoes, dozens, hundreds, even thousands across a day. Each one asks for your response. But are they all worthy of it? Just because a sound bounces into your ears does not mean you must shout back. Some echoes fade naturally, needing no reply. The Buddha once taught that restraint in speech is a form of wisdom. Not every impulse deserves expression. In our age, this can mean that not every email must be answered instantly. Not every comment needs a counter. Not every notification is worth the strain of attention. The echo reminds us, noise is not obligation. There's a quirky practice some Zen communities encourage called echo sitting. During meditation, when a thought arises, you repeat it once in your mind as though it were an echo, then let it fade. For example, if the thought is, "I must check my phone," you softly echo it once, "Check my phone, check my phone." Then let it disappear into silence. This playful method helps practitioners loosen their grip on thoughts, realizing they are simply echoes bouncing around, not commands that must be obeyed. Reflect for a moment. How many of your daily reactions are responses to echoes rather than to true calls? How often do you chase after every sound, every signal, forgetting that many will vanish on their own? Digital fatigue thrives on this chasing. Each buzz feels urgent, as though the valley itself will collapse if you do not reply. But the echo teaches otherwise. Life continues whether you answer or not. Silence itself can be a response. A Zen master might pose a question here. When an echo returns, who is speaking? The valley or you? It is a puzzle that invites reflection. The notifications you see are, in a way, your own voice bouncing back. Your desire for connection, your craving for distraction, your fear of missing out, these shout into the digital valley, and the echoes return. If you stop shouting, the echoes fade. Consider, too, the emotional echoes we carry. An unkind word spoken in haste can reverberate in memory for days, just as praise can echo warmly long after it is heard. Which echoes do you hold on to? Which ones could you let fade? Outside your window tonight, perhaps there are sounds drifting in. The faint bark of a dog, the murmur of a television, the low hum of the night. Each of these is an echo of life moving on, yet none demands your involvement. They exist, they fade, and the silence remains. The story of the monk and the echo offers a practical teaching for digital peace. Imagine treating every alert, every notification, as an echo. Some you may respond to, but most you allow to pass. This shift lightens the burden on your mind, reminding you that presence is not measured by the speed of your replies, but by the calm of your being. Try an experiment. The next time a message appears, pause before answering. Ask yourself, is this an echo or a true call? Does it require my voice, or can it fade on its own? In that pause lies freedom. There is another tale told of a teacher who lived by a mountain stream. When asked why he rarely spoke, he replied, "Because the stream does not need me to." His students later noticed that he often listened more deeply than anyone else. His silence was not absence, but attention, allowing the world to speak in its own way. This is another face of the echo lesson. Sometimes the best response is listening. Tonight, as you soften your breath and your eyes, consider the echoes around you. Which ones are you chasing? Which ones might you release? The valley does not hold on to words. It simply reflects them until they fade. You too can learn this, letting go. And as you drift into rest, let the monk's smile linger in your memory. His wisdom was simple. Not every call requires an answer. Sometimes the world is just echoing back, and your silence is enough. The story flows onward, carrying us from echoes into the boundless sky above, where clouds drift and dissolve. Imagine lying on your back in a wide meadow, gazing upward. The sky stretches endlessly, blue and vast, while clouds roll lazily across its surface. Some are soft and light, others dark and heavy, yet all of them move. None stays forever. This image has long been used in Zen teaching to remind us of impermanence. Thoughts, too, are like clouds. They appear without warning, change shape while we hold them, and eventually dissolve. Yet, how often we mistake them for permanent truths. A worry rises in the mind, and we cling to it as though it will never leave. A memory drifts across consciousness, and we hold it tight, not realizing it too is just a passing cloud. The Buddha taught that impermanence is a fundamental truth of life. Everything changes, our joys, our sorrows, our very bodies. The suffering comes not from change itself, but from our resistance to it. Like someone trying to hold a cloud in their hands, we exhaust ourselves by trying to keep what cannot be kept. There is an old Zen story about a monk who asked his master how to deal with troubling thoughts. The master pointed to the sky where clouds were gathering before a storm. "Can you stop them?" he asked. The monk shook his head. "Then why try?" the master said. "Let them come. Let them go." The sky remains. Think about the weight of digital fatigue. Notifications, images, posts. Each one is like a cloud drifting through your mental sky. But if you chase each one, trying to capture or control it, your sky becomes crowded and stormy. If you step back and allow them to pass, the vastness of the sky reveals itself again. Some Zen practitioners train by sitting outdoors, watching the sky with soft eyes. They do not analyze the clouds, nor try to predict the weather. They simply observe their arising and passing. The lesson is not about clouds at all. It is about the mind. By watching nature's impermanence, they learn to accept their own thoughts as temporary. What would happen if you treated every thought tonight like a drifting cloud? Could you watch it form, shift, and dissolve without gripping it tightly. Imagine the relief of no longer wrestling with every shape in the sky. A Zen master might pose the question, are you the cloud or the sky? When you identify with the passing thought, you feel unstable, changing, restless. But when you rest as the sky itself, spacious, open, untroubled, you realize that thoughts are only visitors. They come and go, but you remain. Reflect, too, on the beauty of impermanence. If clouds never moved, the sky would lose its wonder. If seasons never changed, life would grow stagnant. Impermanence allows freshness. Even in the digital world, updates and endings remind us that nothing is fixed. The challenge is to embrace this flow rather than resist it. A quirky practice in some temples involves painting clouds on walls, not as decoration, but as meditation. Monks would sit before these murals, contemplating how even painted clouds, fixed in place, remind them of movement and change. The practice may sound odd, but it served as a daily reminder that clinging to stillness is as futile as clinging to storms. Perhaps you can try a version of this. Imagine one thought in your mind right now, maybe a worry, maybe a memory. Picture it as a cloud. Watch it drift. Notice how it shifts shape as you look, and then let it float away, replaced by open sky. Outside, the night itself is a vast sky. Even if clouds cover it, the stars still shine beyond, hidden, but not gone. In the same way, even when your thoughts seem endless, the peace beneath them remains. It is not destroyed, only obscured. The teaching of clouds is gentle but firm. Everything passes. The joy you hold now, the sorrow you fear, the fatigue pressing on your mind, all are clouds. They will not last. Knowing this brings both humility and comfort. Humility, because nothing can be owned forever. Comfort, because no pain endures without end. Let your awareness tonight expand like the sky. When a thought arises, smile at it as you would at a drifting cloud. Thank it for appearing. Then let it move on. Do not chase. Do not cling. Simply watch the play of impermanence and feel the freedom it offers. And so the story of drifting clouds leaves us with this. Peace is not found by stopping change, but by resting as the sky through which all things pass. Now the story carries us from drifting clouds to the small but steady flame of a candle in the storm. Imagine a darkened room with only one candle flickering, its glow pushing gently against the shadows. Outside, thunder rolls and rain batters the windows, but within that tiny circle of light, there is calm. The flame bends with the drafts, yet it does not go out. it remains, soft but resilient. This image has long been a metaphor for the inner life. The world outside may swirl with noise, conflict, and endless demands, but within each of us is a flame of awareness that can endure. It does not shout. It does not compete with lightning. It simply burns. To notice this flame is to discover that peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of stillness amid them. The Buddha once explained that when the mind is guarded, distractions cannot extinguish its light. Think about how this applies to modern digital storms. The flood of messages, the constant pressure to react, the glare of screens. All of these winds try to blow out the flame of your calm. But if you protect it, even lightly, it continues to shine. There is a Zen story about a monk asked to carry a candle through a windy courtyard at night. Other monks laughed, certain it would be blown out. But the monk walked slowly, cupping the flame with his hands. When he reached the other side, the candle was still lit. "How did you manage it?" they asked. He replied, "I did not fight the wind. I walked with it." This lesson, though simple, is profound. Resistance often creates more struggle. Harmony preserves the flame. Consider how often we fight against digital storms with more storms, multitasking harder, scrolling faster, answering quicker. Each attempt to resist becomes another gust of wind. But what if you cupped your flame instead, slowing down, shielding your calm with gentle attention? Could your inner light endure with less effort? Some monasteries once practiced what they called candle meditation. Practitioners would sit before a single flame in a dark hall, not staring hard, but letting their eyes soften around it. The flame would waver, bend, almost disappear. But the meditators learned to trust its persistence. In this way, they trained themselves to trust their own inner flame, even when life felt stormy. What would happen if you imagined your awareness tonight as a candle? Perhaps your body feels restless, your thoughts busy, but deep inside there is a flame that remains untouched. Can you feel it, even faintly? That light has been with you since the beginning. A Zen master might pose this question. When the storm rages, is it the flame that trembles, or the air around it? This puzzle invites you to notice that awareness itself is steady. It is only the conditions around it that shift. The flame is not gone when it flickers. It is still there, alive. Reflect, too, on the beauty of small lights. A single candle can guide travelers in the dark, can warm a room, can steady a heart. You do not need to blaze like the sun to find peace. Your quiet glow is enough. In fact, it is often in the gentlest light that we feel most at home. Outside your window, the world may carry its own storms. Sirens in the distance, traffic rushing, voices raised. Yet within your own circle, there can be a candle of calm. All it asks is that you notice it, nurture it, protect it without smothering it. There's another story of a monk who was challenged by a visitor. Your teachings are too soft. The world is harsh. What good is gentleness? The monk pointed to a candle flame. Strike it with your fist, he said. The visitor did, and the flame went out. The monk relit it. Now, he said, cup it with your hands. The visitor did, and the flame stayed. This is the difference between force and care, the monk explained. The visitor bowed, realizing that strength without gentleness destroys, while gentleness preserves. This applies directly to digital fatigue. You cannot fight the storm with fists by forcing yourself to keep up, to respond faster, to consume more. But you can cup your flame with small acts of gentleness, a pause to breathe, a walk outside, a moment of soft eyes. Each one protects the light without aggression. Try this now. Close your eyes and imagine the flame inside your chest, glowing quietly. With each inhale, it steadies. With each exhale, it glows warmer. No matter what storms you have faced today, the flame remains. Notice how this image alone brings a kind of comfort. The candle in the storm teaches us this. Peace is not about escaping difficulty, but about discovering resilience within it. Your flame may bend, may flicker, but it will not go out if you care for it. And in the dark, even the smallest light is enough to guide you home. So as you rest tonight, imagine the storm fading into distance while your flame continues to shine. Let that light warm you, guide you, and remind you that within every moment, no matter how loud the world becomes, stillness is always alive inside you. The path moves now toward something ordinary, something so simple we often overlook its wisdom. The rising steam of a cup of tea. Imagine sitting quietly at a low wooden table. A small teapot rests before you, its clay surface warm to the touch. As you pour, thin trails of steam curl upward, dancing in the air. They twist, shimmer, and vanish almost as quickly as they appear. Each wisp is delicate, unrepeatable, alive for only a moment. For centuries, monks have used tea not only as refreshment, but as meditation. The act of brewing, pouring, and sipping becomes a ritual, teaching presence without words. The Buddha taught that mindfulness can be practiced in every activity, whether walking, breathing, or drinking tea. To hold a cup with awareness is to remind oneself that peace is not hidden in distant mountains. It can be found in the warmth of a simple sip. Consider how this applies to digital fatigue. Much of our day is fragmented, filled with multitasking. Sipping coffee while answering emails, eating lunch while scrolling news, half listening to a friend while checking notifications. The body may be here, but the mind is scattered. By contrast, when you pour tea slowly, watch the steam rise, feel the warmth in your palms, and truly taste the first drop, the mind gathers itself. Scattered attention becomes whole. There is a Zen story about a scholar who visited a master, eager to learn. The master served tea, filling the scholar's cup until it overflowed, spilling across the table. The scholar protested, "It is full. No more can fit." The master nodded. Like this cup, your mind is full of opinions. How can I teach you unless you empty it first? The story reminds us that stillness often requires space. Space created by letting go of excess. When you make tea mindfully, you practice emptying. You set aside the buzzing phone, the racing thoughts, and allow yourself to be fully present with steam, warmth, and taste. This small ritual becomes an anchor, a way to pause in the rushing stream of digital life. A quirky tradition in some Zen temples is tea silence. During evening gatherings, monks would serve tea without a single word. The silence was not awkward, but rich. Every sound, the kettle's hiss, the clink of cups, the gentle slosh of liquid, became part of the meditation. When you drink without distraction, you realize that even tea has its own music. What would happen if you made space for this in your own life? Could one cup of tea, savored fully, refresh you more deeply than an hour of scrolling? Could you discover peace not through escape, but through presence? A Zen master might ask, is it the tea that calms you, or your attention to it? This question invites reflection. The liquid itself is simple leaves and water. The true medicine is how you meet it, with openness, with stillness, with soft eyes. Reflect also on the impermanence of steam. It rises, curls, and vanishes in seconds. You cannot hold it, cannot keep it, and yet its beauty lies precisely in that fleetingness. The steam teaches us to appreciate the present moment because it will not return in the same form again. In this way, the tea becomes a teacher of impermanence, just as clouds and candles do. Imagine tonight holding such a cup. Your hands curl around it, feeling warmth seep into your skin. You watch the steam drift, blurring edges of the air. You lift it slowly, inhale the subtle fragrance, and sip. The flavor spreads gently across the tongue, not rushed, not forced. In that instant, nothing else exists, only you and the tea. Notice how even the thought of this brings a measure of calm. There's another story of a traveler who visited a hermit in the mountains. Expecting great teachings, the traveler asked for wisdom. The hermit simply poured him tea, slowly, carefully, without speaking. The traveler grew impatient. Finally, the hermit said, "If you cannot taste the tea, how will you taste truth?" The lesson was not hidden. It was in the sip itself. Perhaps your own life is filled with storms of activity. But within those storms, you can choose moments of tea, not just literal tea, but any small act done fully. A walk, a breath, a gaze out the window. Each is a cup waiting to be savored. Outside your room tonight, the world may be noisy, rushing, but inside your space, you can brew stillness. The kettle's hiss becomes a lullaby. The rising steam becomes a poem written in the air. The sip becomes a reminder that life is not something to conquer, but something to taste. The teaching of tea is this: peace is woven into ordinary moments. You do not need special conditions, only attentive presence. When you bring your whole self to something as simple as steam rising, you remember that calm is always near. So let the image linger tonight. A cup in your hands, warmth spreading, steam drifting, silence deepening. Let it remind you that even amid digital fatigue, you can pause, breathe, and sip peace. The journey moves now into the image of a fisherman's net. Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet river at dawn. Mist hovers over the surface, and a fisherman casts his net wide, the mesh spreading gracefully in the air before falling into the water. At first, the net seems like a tool of control, gathering, catching, holding. But the story we explore tonight is not about capturing fish. It is about release. There was once a fisherman who spent his days casting nets, always hoping for more. The more he caught, the more restless he became. His net grew heavier, filled not only with fish, but with weeds, stones, and debris. His back ached, his arms trembled, yet still he clung to the net. One day, an old monk passing by saw him struggling. He asked, "Why do you hold so tightly to what burdens you?" The fisherman frowned, confused. "Without the net, I cannot live." The monk smiled gently. "Without loosening the net, you cannot live either." The words struck deeply. That evening, the fisherman cast his net one last time, then cut it loose. As it drifted away, he felt lighter, as though he had dropped more than rope. He had released years of strain. This tale points to one of the Buddha's most practical teachings: grasping creates suffering. When we cling tightly to possessions, to opinions, to digital alerts, we create nets that entangle us. The net may seem to offer safety, but in truth, it often binds us more than it frees us. Think about your own digital life. The constant checking of messages, the refreshing of feeds, the gathering of information. It is like casting a net over and over. At first, it feels necessary, even useful. But over time, the net fills with clutter. You gather far more than you need until the weight drags you down. How often do you feel like that fisherman, burdened by the very tools meant to support you? In some Zen traditions, monks practice the art of loosening, not just giving away belongings, but loosening mental nets, expectations, judgments, unnecessary worries. They remind each other that the net was always optional, though it may not feel that way. This practice is both quirky and profound. Some monks even carried small ropes knotted into nets as reminders. Whenever they felt entangled in thought, they would untie one knot, symbolizing release. What would happen if you loosened one of your own knots tonight? Could you put down one unnecessary worry, one attachment to control, one demand to always stay updated? How might your body feel if the net grew lighter? A Zen master might ask you, are you holding the net, or is the net holding you? The question sounds simple, but its answer can change the way you live. Many of the burdens we believe we carry are, in truth, carrying us. By loosening our grip, we free ourselves. Reflect on how the fisherman discovered peace, not in catching more, but in releasing. The fish swam free, and so did he. The paradox is clear. By letting go, both sides are liberated. In your life, too, letting go of constant digital capture may not mean losing something. It may mean gaining space, clarity, and calm. Outside, you may hear the sound of night insects, their chorus weaving through the dark. Imagine those sounds as the river, west-eyed and flowing. The fisherman no longer casts his net. He sits on the bank, watching the water move, unburdened. The river provides in its own way fresh air, beauty, peace. He does not need to trap it. There is another story of a monk who compared thoughts to fish. Some are large and dazzling, some small and quick, some dark and heavy, he said. But the wise person does not need to catch them all. To watch them swim is enough. This playful metaphor captures the essence of meditation. The mind is full of thoughts, but you need not entangle them. To notice is enough. So what if tonight you allowed your mental net to loosen? Instead of catching every thought, every worry, every digital echo, you let them swim free. You watch them pass in the river of awareness, grateful but not burdened. The teaching of the fisherman's net is simple. Freedom is not in holding more, but in releasing. Nets are useful at times, but they are not meant to be carried forever. You have the power to set them down. And as you drift toward sleep, imagine cutting loose one net after another. The net of unfinished tasks, the net of restless scrolling, the net of demands that weigh too heavily. With each release, you feel lighter. By the time your eyes close, you are no longer tangled. You are resting freely, like the fisherman watching the river flow. The path carries us now to a mysterious teaching, one that has puzzled and enlightened countless seekers. The gate without a gate. Imagine walking through a quiet forest trail, mist rising from the earth. Suddenly, you arrive at a wooden gate standing alone, with no walls around it. You could walk around it easily, yet tradition tells you to pass through. Why? Because sometimes the obstacle is not real. It exists only in the mind. In Zen, the gate without a gate is a way of describing how liberation works. The barriers that seem to keep us trapped are often made of our own thoughts, our own grasping. Once we see through them, they dissolve. The Buddha once said that freedom is found not by adding more, but by removing illusion. This is what the gate represents. Think about how digital life creates invisible gates. The endless comparison with others online, the pressure to stay updated, the fear of missing out, each feels like a wall keeping you from peace. Yet if you look closer, you see there is no actual wall. You could put down the phone, close the laptop, walk outside. The gate was never locked. There is a story of a monk who longed for enlightenment. His master pointed to an open field and said, "There is the gate. Go through." The monk looked confused. "But there is no gate," he protested. The master smiled. "Then why do you keep stopping?" The lesson was clear. The mind often invents barriers where none exist. Consider how often you stop yourself because of imagined gates. I can't rest until I finish this. I can't be happy until I achieve that. I can't disconnect because I'll fall behind. Each is a mental gate, but if you look with soft eyes, you realize the space is already open. Some Zen monks practiced what they called koan sitting, where they would meditate on paradoxical questions like this one. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Who were you before your parents were born? Where is the gate that is not a gate? These were not riddles to solve logically. They were meant to shake the mind loose, to reveal that many of our obstacles are illusions. What would happen if you treated your digital fatigue in this way? Instead of asking, "How do I escape?" you ask, "What if there was never a prison?" The freedom you seek may not be something to achieve later. It may already be here, waiting for you to notice. A Zen master might ask you, when you walk through the gate without a gate, where do you arrive? The answer is both simple and profound. You arrive exactly where you are. Nothing has changed, yet everything feels different. Reflect on this as you rest tonight. Imagine walking through an open gate in your mind. On one side is noise, comparison, striving. On the other side is calm, presence, simplicity. The funny thing is, both sides are the same place. You. The difference is not in the world, but in how you see it. There is another story of a teacher who placed a rope across a path. Students stopped, uncertain how to continue. The teacher laughed and stepped over it. "Why hesitate at what you can cross so easily?" he asked. Life is full of such ropes, small, harmless, yet magnified by the mind into great obstacles. Perhaps your own rope is the belief that you must always be productive, always connected, always available. But is it truly a wall, or just a rope you could step over? Outside your window tonight, the world continues as it always has. The wind moving, the earth turning, the stars shining. None of these ask you to prove yourself, to compare, to rush. They simply exist. Like the forest around the gate without walls, life itself is spacious. The teaching of the gate. Without a gate is this: many of the barriers we fear are made only of thought. When you see them clearly, you realize there was never anything to hold you back. So as you breathe tonight, picture yourself walking forward. A gate stands before you, silent and strange. You take a step and pass through. Nothing resists you, nothing blocks you. And on the other side, which is also this very moment, you discover the peace that was always yours. The path now turns to the sound of gravel beneath the feet, the quiet rhythm of steps taken with care. Imagine a stone garden at dawn, raked lines curving gently across, the sand, rocks resting like islands in a sea of stillness. You walk slowly along a path that winds through this serene space. Each footstep crunches lightly against the stones, a sound both grounding and soothing. This is the practice of walking meditation, a way to restore balance between movement and stillness. In our fast-paced world, walking is often just a means to an end, rushing from car to office, hurrying down crowded sidewalks, pacing through grocery aisles. The body moves, but the mind remains elsewhere, tangled in plans or screens. Zen offers another possibility, walking not as a chore, but as a meditation. Each step becomes a return to the present. The Buddha once described mindful walking as a way of weaving awareness into everyday life. To take a single step with full presence is to discover that peace is not somewhere distant, but beneath your very feet. The ground supports you. The earth welcomes you. What more is needed? There is a Zen story of a monk who was asked how he practiced mindfulness. He replied, "When I walk, I walk. When I sit, I sit. When I eat, I eat." The simplicity puzzled his students. They expected profound answers, not ordinary actions. But the monk explained, most people walk while thinking of sitting, sit while thinking of eating, and eat while thinking of walking. To do one thing fully is the essence of peace. Consider how often digital fatigue pulls you away from your steps. Walking with a phone in hand, eyes locked on a glowing screen, you barely notice the ground beneath you. The body moves, but the mind remains caught elsewhere. What might change if, for even a few moments, you placed the phone away and let each step be enough? Some Zen communities practice what they call kinhin, walking slowly in a circle after sitting meditation. Each step is deliberate, timed with the breath. Inhale, lift the foot. Exhale, place it down. The pace is so gentle, it may seem strange to outsiders, but within the slowness lies deep calm. The monks are not trying to get anywhere. They are simply walking, fully alive in each moment. What would happen if you allowed yourself one short walk each day with no goal, no destination, no device? Could you rediscover the quiet joy of simply moving, of hearing your feet touch the ground? A Zen master might ask, if each step carries you home, where else do you need to go? The question lingers, inviting reflection. Perhaps the peace we seek is not at the end of the path, but in every step along it. Reflect also on the design of the stone garden itself. The raked sand is not permanent. Monks redraw it regularly, letting lines fade and reappear. This reminds them that beauty is not fixed, but created in each moment. Your own steps are like those raked lines, impermanent yet meaningful, shaping the present even as they fade. Imagine yourself tonight walking slowly through such a garden. The air is cool, the stones crunch softly beneath you, the sand glimmers faintly under moonlight. You breathe in, take a step. You breathe out, take another. The rhythm soothes the body, quiets the mind. There is no rush, no finish line, only this step, then the next. There's another story of a monk who walked everywhere barefoot, even on rough stones. When asked why, he said, The earth is the first teacher. With each step, I remember, his feet were sometimes sore, but his heart was light. He did not treat the path as an obstacle, but as a companion. Perhaps your own life is filled with hurried steps, rushing to meetings, hurrying between tasks. Yet even within this rush, you can choose one mindful step. Pause. Feel the ground. Notice the contact. Let your awareness sink like roots into the earth. Outside your window. Tonight, the world is moving. Wind across leaves, night animals stepping softly, rivers flowing unseen. All of it is a form of walking, a continuous movement of life. You are part of that rhythm. With each step, you join in. The teaching of the stone garden path is this: balance is found not by escaping movement, but by uniting it with stillness. When you walk with awareness, you are both moving and resting at once. The mind settles, even as the body journeys forward. So as you prepare for rest, imagine yourself walking slowly in a quiet garden. Each step is light, each breath steady. The world around you softens into silence, while within you, balance returns. And in that gentle rhythm, step, breath, step, you discover that peace has always been beneath your feet. The path carries us now to the branch of a tree, where a small sparrow perches in stillness. Imagine walking through a quiet garden at dusk. The air is cool, the sky painted in fading colors. Suddenly, your eyes catch a sparrow resting on a slender branch. It is not singing, not flying, not building a nest. It is simply there, light, silent, alive. For a brief moment, time itself seems to pause with the bird. This image, though ordinary, has long been treasured in Zen. A fleeting moment of stillness often reveals more about life than hours of busy searching. The sparrow teaches us the beauty of presence without effort. It asks for nothing, claims nothing, yet in its small pause, the entire world feels whole. The Buddha taught that awareness is like a lamp shining quietly in a dark room. You do not need to force it. You only need to notice. In the same way, the sparrow does not struggle to be peaceful. Its very being radiates peace. This teaching is especially important in a world of constant activity. We often believe that peace must be achieved through effort, another goal to chase, another box to check. But sometimes peace is discovered in the act of simply being, like the sparrow resting without urgency. There is a Zen story of a young monk who spent all his time running from one task to the next, desperate to prove his worth. One day, he saw his master standing still in the courtyard, watching a bird on a branch. Minutes passed. Then more. Finally, the student asked, "What are you doing?" The master replied, "Learning from the bird." The student frowned. "But the bird is doing nothing." The master smiled. Exactly. Think about the modern digital storm. We are encouraged to always be doing, producing content, responding to messages, chasing updates. Stillness feels unproductive, even wasteful. Yet the sparrow reminds us that being is enough. Life is not measured by constant action, but by the depth of presence we bring to each moment. Some Zen practitioners have practiced what they call still point meditation. Instead of focusing on breath or posture, they sit and wait for a natural moment of stillness to appear. It might be the silence after a bell fades, the pause between breaths, or the sight of a bird resting quietly. In that still point, they taste a calm that is already there, requiring no effort. What would happen if you treated stillness not as a task, but as a gift? Could you allow yourself to pause, like the sparrow, even for a few minutes each day? Could you discover that doing nothing is not the absence of life, but the heart of it? A Zen master might ask, when the bird rests, is it wasting time, or is it fully alive? The question lingers. Perhaps the moments we dismiss as unproductive are the very moments that keep us whole. Reflect also on the fragility of such moments. The sparrow may fly away at any second. The branch may sway, the air may shift, and the stillness may end. Yet its brevity makes it precious. Just as clouds drift, steam fades, and candles flicker, the sparrow's rest reminds us that beauty often lives in what cannot be held. Imagine yourself tonight as that sparrow, perched gently on a branch within your own life. No task pressing, no demand urgent. Your breath rises and falls like the rhythm of feathers in the breeze. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. You are simply here, and that is enough. There's another story told of a monk who was asked what enlightenment felt like. He looked out the window at a bird resting on a tree and said, "Like that." His students waited for more explanation, but he gave none. He trusted that the image itself was the teaching. Perhaps your own life has given you such moments, though you may not have noticed them fully. A pause in conversation, the hush of twilight, the stillness of a pet resting nearby. Each is a sparrow on a branch, waiting to be seen. Outside your window tonight, the world may hold its own sparrows. The faint chirp of a bird settling into its nest, the hush of leaves holding their breath, the stillness between gusts of wind. If you listen closely, you may catch such a moment, fleeting but real. The teaching of the sparrow is this: presence is not about effort, but about allowing. When you pause, when you stop chasing every echo, every storm, every demand, you find that stillness was always perched nearby, waiting to be noticed. So as you rest tonight, imagine that small sparrow on its branch. Let its quiet presence mirror your own. Feel the gift of doing nothing, of simply being alive. In that stillness, even if it lasts only a moment, you discover a truth deeper than any words. Peace is already here. The story now turns to a simple image: a monk with one robe. Imagine a traveler who owns almost nothing, just a robe upon his shoulders and a bowl for food. At first glance, it may seem like poverty, but look closer. With no need to choose what to wear, no worry about possessions to protect, no fear of losing what cannot be lost, this monk walks lightly through life. His simplicity is not deprivation, but liberation. The Buddha taught that craving binds us more tightly than chains. Every "I want" becomes a cord tying us to dissatisfaction. The monk with one robe is a living reminder of how much lighter life can be when we need less. His robe is enough. His bowl is enough. His heart is free. Contrast this with the digital age, where endless choices overwhelm us. Thousands of shirts to buy online, countless shows to stream, endless feeds to scroll. Each option promises fulfillment, yet leaves us restless. This is the paradox of abundance. The more we have, the less satisfied we feel. The monk with one robe, by contrast, teaches us that simplicity brings clarity. There is a Zen story about two monks traveling together. One had a heavy bag filled with robes, books, and trinkets. The other carried only his single robe and bowl. When the road grew steep, the burdened monk grew weary, sweating and stumbling. The lighter monk walked easily, humming softly. At the end of the day, the first monk asked, "How do you walk so calmly?" The second smiled, "Because I have nothing to carry." This story is not just about physical possessions. It is also about the mental baggage we hold: worries, comparisons, regrets. Each is like another robe stuffed into a pack. Digital fatigue often comes not from the devices themselves, but from the weight of endless input. To simplify is to set down the pack, even for a while, and feel the relief of walking lightly. Some Zen practitioners adopted quirky habits to remind themselves of simplicity. A monk might purposely mend his robe again and again rather than replace it, seeing beauty in the worn stitches. Another might eat the same simple meal daily, not from lack of choice, but from freedom within it. These practices were not about denial, but about ease. Each choice reduced complication, leaving space for peace. What would happen if you simplified one small part of your own life? Could you set aside one app that drains you? Could you let go of one habit of constant checking? Even small acts of simplification can create surprising lightness. A Zen master might ask, "Do you own your possessions, or do they own you?" The question can be applied to digital possessions too. The endless photos, files, and messages we hoard. Are they treasures, or are they chains? Reflect on the image of the monk at night. He folds his robe neatly beside him, places his bowl nearby, and rests. He has no locks to worry about, no shelves to organize, no endless wardrobe to choose from. His sleep is deep, untroubled. Meanwhile, those burdened by possessions often toss and turn, planning, protecting, fearing loss. Which bed would you rather rest in tonight? There is another story of a master who asked his students to bring their most valuable possession to the temple. Some brought coins, some brought jewels, others books. One student brought nothing. When asked why, he said, "The robe on my back is enough." The master bowed to him, saying, "You already understand. Perhaps your own robe could be the essentials that keep you grounded. Your breath, your body, your awareness. Beyond that, so much of what we cling to may not be necessary. To recognize this is not to reject the world, but to walk more lightly within it. Outside your window tonight, the world is simple. The wind moves, the stars shine, the night deepens. Nature does not hoard. A tree wears only its leaves. A river carries only its flow. A bird rests with nothing but feathers. All are whole in their simplicity. The teaching of the monk with one robe is this: simplicity is not about lack, but about freedom. To need less is to live more fully. To let go of excess is to rediscover enough. So as you rest tonight, imagine yourself with one robe, not literally, but symbolically. You set down the weight of excess, the burden of choices, the clutter of thoughts. You discover that what remains, your breath, your presence, your being, is enough, more than enough. And with that simplicity, peace unfolds like a robe around your shoulders, light and warm. Now the story drifts toward sound, toward the deep resonance of a temple bell. Imagine standing in a quiet courtyard at twilight. The air is still, lanterns glow faintly, and then, gong. a bell is struck, low and sonorous. The sound expands outward, rolling across rooftops and fields, carrying calm with it. You listen as the tone fades slowly, until only silence remains. And even that silence feels fuller for having contained the sound. For centuries, temple bells have marked time for monks and villagers alike. They call people to prayer, announce the hours of the day, or signal the beginning of meditation. But their teaching goes beyond ritual. The bell demonstrates impermanence in a way no words can. Its sound is clear and strong, yet it cannot be held. No matter how beautiful, it must fade. The Buddha taught that clinging to what is fleeting brings suffering. The bell is a gentle reminder of this truth. We enjoy the resonance while it lasts, then release it when it fades. In that release, peace arises. There is a Zen story of a young monk who asked his master how to understand the meaning of sound in meditation. The master struck a bell and said, "Listen." The monk nodded as the tone filled the air. When the sound began to fade, the master asked, "Are you still listening?" The monk closed his eyes and leaned into the silence. After a moment, he smiled. "Yes." The master bowed. The lesson was clear. True listening continues even after the sound is gone. Think about how this applies to modern life. Digital notifications are like bells, but harsh and fragmented. They pull us outward, demanding immediate reaction. They do not invite deep listening, only quick response. The temple bell, by contrast, invites you to pause, to receive fully, to notice the fading. One draws you into restlessness, the other draws you into presence. Some Zen temples have a quirky custom. After striking the bell, monks count the fading tones until they can hear them no more. This practice sharpens awareness, but it also softens the heart. By attending fully to the sound, practitioners learn to savor what is here, rather than grasping for what is gone. What would happen if you treated the bells of your daily life this way? Could you hear a message, an experience, a moment, and then let it fade without clinging? Could you resist the urge to replay or repeat, trusting that the silence that follows is part of the music? A Zen master might ask, "Where does the bell go when it stops ringing?" The question invites reflection. Does the sound vanish, or does it live on in your memory, your breath, your heart? The answer is less important than the awareness it awakens. Reflect, too, on how resonance works. A bell does not create sound only once. Its vibration carries on, touching air, walls, even your chest as you stand nearby. In the same way, your own words and actions ripple outward, leaving echoes in others. What kind of resonance do you leave behind? Is it sharp and fleeting, like a digital ping, or deep and lasting, like a temple bell? Imagine yourself tonight listening to such a bell. Its first strike vibrates through the air, then slowly expands. You close your eyes, feeling the tone in your chest, letting it fill you. Then you listen as it fades, softer and softer, until all that remains is silence. But the silence feels richer now, as though the bell has opened a space within it. There's another story of a traveler who heard a temple bell in the distance. He stopped on the road, captivated. A villager asked, "Why do you stand so still?" The traveler replied, "Because the bell is carrying me home." He meant not a physical home, but the home of stillness inside. The sound reminded him of what he had always carried within. Perhaps your own bell is not made of bronze, but of moments. A kind word, a breath of fresh air, a pause before sleep. Each rings softly in your life, inviting you to notice, to receive, to let go. Outside your window tonight, listen closely. Perhaps there is the faint hum of crickets, the murmur of wind, the distant sound of traffic. Each is a kind of bell, ringing and fading. If you allow, you can treat them as teachings, reminders that everything appears and disappears. And in that appearing and disappearing, peace can be found. The teaching of the temple bell is this: beauty lies not only in the strike, but in the fade. To live fully is to listen deeply, to enjoy what is here, and to let it go when it passes. So as you rest tonight, imagine the echo of a bell fading into silence. Let it remind you that your worries, too, are like sounds, loud for a while, then fading into quiet. All you need to do is listen, receive, and release. In that rhythm, you will find the resonance of peace. Now the story flows toward water once more, this time carrying lanterns on a river. Imagine a night festival in a quiet village. The sky is dark, filled with stars, and people gather at the water's edge, holding paper lanterns, each glowing softly with a flame inside. One by one, they place the lanterns on the river. The current takes them gently, carrying them downstream in a slow, shimmering procession. The surface of the water sparkles with points of light, drifting farther and farther until they vanish into distance. This image is more than beauty. It is a practice of letting go. Each lantern represents a burden, a worry, or a wish. By releasing it into the water, people symbolically release what weighs them down. They do not chase after the lanterns once they float away. They trust the current to carry them. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering. To release is to free both the object and oneself. The lantern ritual captures this truth. What we place into the river is not lost. It transforms into light carried by the flow. There is a Zen story of a woman who carried grief for many years. A master invited her to a lantern festival. She wrote her sorrow on paper, folded it around a candle, and set it afloat. Watching it drift, she wept, but then she smiled. "I thought letting go would be like losing," she said, "but it feels like offering." The master nodded. The ritual did not erase her grief, but it transformed her relationship with it. Think about how digital fatigue works. We hold on to countless fragments, unread emails, unanswered messages, half-finished articles, endless feeds of news. Each is like another lantern clutched in the hand, burning us with its flame. What would happen if we placed some of those lanterns into the river of time, trusting that we need not carry them all? Some Zen communities hold quirky variations of this ritual. Instead of paper lanterns, monks might release flower petals into a stream, or even whisper burdens into the air, imagining them carried by the wind. The method is less important than the intention: to acknowledge the weight, then to let it flow away. What would you release tonight, if you could? Which thought? Which worry? Which restless tug of the digital world could be written on your lantern and placed into the river? A Zen master might ask, "Do you carry the lantern, or does the lantern carry you?" The question is gentle but piercing. Sometimes the burdens we grip most tightly are the very ones gripping us. Reflect, too, on the beauty of the drifting lights. Each lantern shines not only for its owner, but for the whole community. Together, they create a river of stars, a reminder that our struggles and hopes are shared. Letting go is not just personal. It connects us to others. Imagine yourself tonight standing at such a river. You hold a lantern in your hands, warm against your palms. On its paper walls, you have written one thing you are ready to release. You lower it to the water. At first, you hesitate. Should you hold it longer? But then the current pulls, and you let go. The lantern drifts away, glowing softly, until it joins the procession of lights. You watch as it becomes part of something larger, beautiful and free. There's another story of a monk who released lanterns every year, each one for a mistake he had made. When asked why he continued the ritual after decades, he said, "Because mistakes keep arriving, and so must forgiveness." His practice was not about erasing errors, but about refusing to carry them endlessly. Perhaps your own lantern tonight could be a moment of self-forgiveness, a missed opportunity, a harsh word spoken, a day lost to fatigue. You need not hold them forever. Place them on the river. Let them drift. Outside your window, perhaps you hear water moving somewhere. A pipe, a stream, the rhythm of rain. Imagine those sounds carrying lanterns too, each one a reminder that you are not meant to hold everything alone. The teaching of the lanterns is this: letting go is not losing. It is releasing what no longer needs to be held, trusting the current to carry it onward. When you release, you create space for peace, for breath, for rest. So as you prepare for sleep, picture the river of lanterns glowing under the stars. One of them is yours, floating freely. Watch it drift away until your eyes soften and close. Let your mind drift with it, light and unburdened. And in that release, may you find the quiet glow of peace. The story carries us now into the solitude of a hermit's hut. Imagine a small wooden dwelling hidden deep in the forest. Moss creeps along its roof. Smoke drifts softly from a chimney, and around it the trees stand like silent guardians. Inside, the hut holds only what is needed: a mat for sleeping, a pot for cooking, perhaps a few books or scrolls. There is no clutter, no noise, no endless stream of information. Only space, only quiet. In Zen tradition, the hermit's hut symbolizes a life pared down to essentials. It is not about isolation for its own sake, but about creating room for rest and renewal. The Buddha once reminded his followers that seclusion can be medicine for the restless mind. By stepping away, even briefly, we remember what it feels like to be whole. Think about modern life with its constant buzz. To be alone often feels strange, even frightening. We fill silence with music, podcasts, notifications, anything to avoid the stillness. Yet the hermit's hut teaches that silence is not emptiness. It is fullness, hidden beneath layers of noise. There is a story of a young monk who longed for enlightenment, but felt overwhelmed by the bustle of the monastery. His master sent him to live in a forest hut for one season. At first, the monk was restless. He missed conversation, missed the rhythm of community. But as weeks passed, he began to notice things he had overlooked before. The sound of rain on the roof, the glow of dawn through cracks in the wall, the way silence seemed to breathe. By the end of the season, he returned with eyes calmer and heart lighter. "What did you learn?" the master asked. The monk bowed and said that nothing was missing. The hermit's hut offers this lesson. Stepping back from constant input does not mean losing life, but rediscovering it. When you unplug from digital storms, even for a little while, you build your own hut. It may not be in the forest. It may be in your bedroom, on a quiet walk, or during a meal without distractions. But the principle is the same. You create space, and in that space, peace appears. Some Zen practitioners adopt quirky practices of solitude. One monk lived in a hut with no furniture except a single stool. Another wrote poems on scraps of wood and left them scattered for the wind to take. Another grew vegetables in silence, speaking only to the plants. These practices may sound eccentric, but each one pointed to the same truth. When you simplify and step back, the world begins to speak more clearly. What would happen if you built your own hermit's hut, even for 1 hour each day? Could you turn off the devices, dim the lights, and let silence fill the space? Could you discover, as the monk did, that nothing was missing? A Zen master might ask, is the hut inside the forest, or is the forest inside the hut? The question seems playful, but it invites you to see that seclusion is not about walls. It is about perception. The hermit is not cut off from the world. He is woven into it more deeply. Reflect on how your own heart longs for such a hut. When you feel overwhelmed by news, by messages, by noise, perhaps what you seek is not escape, but return to a simpler rhythm, a quieter room, a gentler breath. Imagine tonight that you step into such a hut. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wood and earth. You light a small candle, its glow soft against the walls. Outside, the forest hums with life. Crickets, owls, the whisper of wind. But inside, all is calm. You sit on the floor, exhale slowly, and feel the weight of the day sliding away. The hut holds you like a cocoon, safe and still. There's another story of a hermit who lived alone for decades. When a traveler asked if he ever grew lonely, the hermit smiled and pointed to the forest. "How could I be lonely," he said, "when I hear the river speak, the birds sing, and the wind tell stories?" His solitude was not emptiness, but communion. Perhaps your own version of the hut does not require mountains or forests. Perhaps it is as simple as closing your laptop, placing your phone aside, and allowing yourself to sit quietly for a while. In that act, you step into your hut, and the world grows spacious again. Outside your window tonight, the world may be carrying its own stories. The sound of wind moving, the hush of night. These are the voices that speak when the digital noise fades. They are the teachers waiting in your hut. The teaching of the hermit's hut is this: rest and renewal are not luxuries, but necessities. Without space, the mind frays. With space, the mind returns to its natural calm. So as you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself resting in that hut, surrounded by silence, held by the forest. Nothing is missing. Everything is enough. And in that simplicity, peace settles around you like a blanket. The story turns now to freshness, to the garden after rain. Imagine walking outside just after a storm has passed. The ground is dark and damp, the air rich with the scent of wet earth. Leaves glisten with droplets, and petals bow under the weight of water. The world feels renewed, washed clean by the sky. Birds emerge cautiously, shaking feathers, testing their songs. There is a hush, yet also a vibrancy, as though everything has been touched by new life. This image has long been used in Zen to illustrate the mind after quiet sitting. Storms of thought may rage, thunder of worry may roar, lightning of distraction may flash across awareness. But if you stay still, if you let the storm move on, what remains is freshness. Like the garden, your mind feels cleansed, renewed, alive. The Buddha taught that nothing is permanent, not storms, not joys, not sorrows. Everything changes. This teaching, while simple, offers deep comfort. No matter how fierce the storm of digital fatigue, it cannot last forever. When the clouds part, clarity returns. There is a Zen story of a monk who sat through a night of heavy rain in his small hut. Water leaked through the roof, soaking his robe. The wind howled, lightning flashed, yet he remained still, breathing softly. At dawn, the storm cleared. He stepped outside and saw the garden sparkling with dew. "This," he said, "is why we endure." The storm had not been punishment, but preparation. Without it, the freshness would not have felt so vivid. Think about how storms appear in modern life. Deadlines crash like thunder. Notifications flash like lightning. Waves of stress pound at the mind. It feels overwhelming, as though it will never end. And yet, if you stay steady, the storm passes. On the other side, a quiet joy appears, a sense of space, of renewal, of possibility. Some Zen practitioners engage in quirky rain practices. They sit outside during gentle showers, letting drops fall on their skin, not to suffer, but to remember connection. They learn that the rain is not an enemy, but part of the rhythm of life. Afterward, the air feels pure, their senses sharpened, their hearts lighter. What would happen if you treated your own storms like this? Could you see digital fatigue not as a permanent prison, but as a passing weather system? Could you wait with patience, knowing the garden of your mind will feel fresh again? A Zen master might ask, do you fear the storm because of its noise, or because you forget it will end? The question invites you to reflect. Often, our suffering comes not from the storm itself, but from believing it will last forever. Reflect also on the beauty that storms bring. Rain nourishes soil, fills rivers, feeds life. In the same way, even struggles can enrich us, deepening compassion and resilience. The freshness afterward is not in spite of the storm, but because of it. Imagine yourself tonight walking in a garden just after rain. The air is cool, the sky clearing. You smell earth, damp and alive. You see drops shining on leaves like tiny jewels. Each breath feels fuller, each step lighter. This is your mind after rest, after stillness. Whatever storms passed today are fading, leaving space for renewal. There's another story of a teacher who asked his students to write poems after a storm. Most wrote about fear and chaos. One student, however, wrote only, "After the rain, moss grows greener." The teacher smiled. That student had understood the deeper teaching, that storms are not the end, but the beginning of new growth. Perhaps your own storm today was small, a difficult conversation, a flood of tasks, a restless mind, or perhaps it was heavy. Either way, it will pass. And when it does, notice the freshness it leaves. Notice how even fatigue can open the door to gratitude for calm. Outside your window tonight, perhaps rain has fallen, or perhaps only silence. But the earth always holds memory of storms. Seeds sprout, rivers swell, air clears. The world renews itself endlessly, teaching us to do the same. The teaching of the garden after rain is this: peace is not about avoiding storms, but about trusting their passing. After the noise, clarity comes. After the weight, lightness returns. After the storm, the garden glows. So, as you rest tonight, imagine the world washed clean. The air is fresh, the leaves shining, the soil breathing deeply. You walk through this garden slowly, every sense awakened, every step renewed. And as you breathe in that freshness, you feel your own mind refreshed, ready to rest in quiet peace. The story circles back now, returning to the practice of soft eyes, the same gentle invitation with which we began. Imagine yourself once more looking out over a horizon at dusk. The sky is wide, colors deepening, edges blurring as night approaches. Your eyes are not straining, not narrowing. they are open and relaxed, taking in the whole scene at once. This is the way of soft eyes. Throughout this journey, we have wandered through lakes and bamboo groves, listened to bells and echoes, followed rivers of breath, and walked stone garden paths. Each image has offered a piece of the teaching. Peace arises not from forcing life into order, but from loosening our grip, softening our gaze, and letting the world be as it is. Returning to soft eyes now, we see that all along they have been the doorway to ease. The Buddha taught that awareness is like a lamp. When it is steady, it illuminates everything around it. But when we force it too narrowly, it flickers and dims. Soft eyes reflect this lamp-like awareness. They do not grasp. They simply shine gently, revealing what is present without judgment. There is a Zen story of a monk who struggled with meditation. He tried too hard, furrowing his brow, forcing concentration until his body ached. His master placed a bowl of water before him. "Look," he said. The monk stared until his eyes blurred. "Too hard," said the master. "Now glance with softness." The monk relaxed, and the water reflected clearly. "Do you see?" The world becomes clear, not when you strain, but when you soften. Think of how often we strain in modern life. We push our eyes to focus on screens, our minds to juggle tasks, our hearts to meet expectations. This constant narrowness exhausts us. But when we soften our gaze, our breath, our grip, we discover that life supports us without effort. Some Zen practitioners used quirky exercises to remind themselves of soft eyes. One master asked his students to watch the stars without naming constellations, simply letting the sky arrive in their awareness. Another encouraged them to walk slowly while gazing at the periphery rather than the center. These practices revealed a truth. When we stop forcing the eyes, the world becomes larger, richer, more peaceful. What would happen if you lived with soft eyes each day? Could you meet challenges not with clenched focus, but with openness? Could you treat the digital world not as a battlefield, but as a passing landscape, to be seen lightly, without strain? A Zen master might ask, when your eyes are soft, is it you looking at the world, or the world looking at you? The question points to the intimacy of perception. With soft eyes, the boundary between seer and seen dissolves. You are not apart from life. You are woven into it. Reflect, too, on how soft eyes change the body. When the gaze relaxes, the jaw loosens, the shoulders drop, the breath deepens. calm spreads naturally, as though the entire being follows the eye's lead. To soften vision is to soften life. Imagine yourself tonight resting with this practice. You lie back, your eyelids heavy. Even if your eyes are closed, you can feel them softening, no longer pressed or tight. Your inner gaze widens, receiving everything without effort. Thoughts drift like clouds, but you do not chase them. You simply watch, softly, gently. There is another story of a student who asked his master how to find inner peace. The master pointed to his own eyes and said, "Soften here, and the heart will follow." The teaching was simple but profound. Peace begins not with control, but with release. Outside your window, the night may hold countless sights and sounds, shadows shifting, leaves stirring, stars glowing. If you soften your eyes, even in imagination, you can receive them all as one whole, without needing to grasp any single detail. This is the gift of soft eyes, wholeness without effort. The teaching we return to is this: the path to inner peace is not another task to complete. It is an easing, a softening, a remembering. When you see with soft eyes, you remember that life itself is spacious, that your mind is wide, that your heart is free. So let yourself rest now, eyes soft, breath gentle as body at ease. The journey has carried you far, but the destination was always here. Peace is not ahead. It is beneath your gaze, within your breath, around your being. And now, as the story closes, let the pace slow. Imagine your breath lengthening, each inhale each exhale deeper than the last. The images we have walked through, lakes, bamboo, bells, lanterns, gardens, fade gently into the background, like dreams dissolving into dawn. What remains is the stillness you carry inside, steady and quiet. Zen has always whispered the same truth. Peace is not something to be chased. It is what appears when chasing ends. Like leaves drifting on a stream, your worries can float away if you allow them. Like lanterns on a river, your burdens can drift until only their glow remains, gentle and harmless. So tonight, let your eyes soften. Let your body sink into rest. Let your mind open like a sky after storm. You are not required to solve anything now. You are not required to hold anything. The world can wait. Your only task is to breathe and to rest. Perhaps you hear the faint sounds of night outside, a whisper of wind, the hum of distant life. Let them lull you as though the earth itself were singing you to sleep. With each sound fading, with each breath deepening, you drift closer to calm. Peace is here. It has always been here. And as you surrender to rest, remember, like the monk who smiled at the tiger, like the sparrow on the branch, like the candle in the storm, you already carry everything you need. Now, let go. Let yourself drift. Sweet dreams.